Hello and welcome to Roll Call. This is part of a limited series that takes a dive into the various different builds and archetypes that you can put together in Kingdom Death. My name's Fen, and today we're looking at one of two classes I pioneered. So this is a Fen special. There's only really two of them. Most of the other things were thought up and put together either by people who came before us in dungeon crawlers in general, and MMOs and similar, or were put together by other players in the community. Originally, this class I called Trappers, and I never liked that name. I called them Trappers because they focus around dealing with the trap. But while I was prepping for this, while I was working on these video series, I came to realise that a better way to look at this is to consider one of the things used is spears, and lances are a form of spear. And you could look upon the trap as a metaphor, as being a particularly nasty boil. You got to deal with it. You got to relieve the pressure. So you could lance it. So I feel that's kind of where we're going, and I've decided to rename them to lancers. I may occasionally slip up and still call them trappers. I mean, I've been calling them trappers for over half a decade, so it's, old habits die hard and everything. But lancers. So, what are they? As you may have gathered, they are a support and damage dealing survivor who specialises in handling the trap card. Now, trap cards are completely unique to Kingdom Death, as is most of the hit location deck. Not many of the boss battlers use a hit location deck at this date, which I actually think is a little bit of a shame. I prefer it when they do, but I will say Primal gets around it quite nicely with an entirely different way that it operates its AI cards. But to return to this, the trap exists as a randomized reshuffle. So instead of working like the AI deck, which when you get to the end of a lap through the deck, you reshuffle the discard pile and go again, the trap instead randomizes where the discard's going to be. So it makes the monster more unpredictable when you're attacking it, because at any moment it could suddenly reset everything. It also exists as a double punishment. The first thing it does is it ends your attack. You don't get to resolve any hit locations, so it shuts that down entirely, which protects the monster. But then it also generally delivers a penalty for drawing it, and that can be a variety of different things. Some of them can be fairly mild, some can be quite dangerous. But if you're able to hit into the trap and just ignore it, just cancel it, stop it doing its thing, then you'll still get the benefit of the reshuffle, but you won't have to deal with any of the price paid in regards to whatever the trap is doing. And that's very powerful because you're suddenly shutting down one of the monster's forms of scaling. So the primary ways that we do this can either be proactive or reactive. We're going to start by talking about the reactive ones because they're the ones that you can do in the core game. And in fact, both of these two ways can be used entirely. First up, we have the Blue Charm, one of my favourite items in the game. The Blue Charm is crafted at the Barber Surgeon, so it'll take you a little bit of time to get that unlocked, and it needs a perfect resource. It is a item. Note that it's jewelry and fragile. This does mean it can suffer some problems, especially fragile. Self-archiving and all that. If you have 5 blue affinities in your gear grid, so that's 4 plus the 1 on the Blue Charm itself, you gain the Unshakable ability, which is when you draw a trap, you roll 1d10, and on a 6+, you discard the trap and reshuffle the deck. Now, when we look at Spear, we'll see a more verbose version of how this works, but the key thing to understand is when it says reshuffle the deck, you're reshuffling the discard pile back in. That's absolutely the case. Otherwise, this does a really old thing where it would discard the trap and you're just reshuffling the deck for no reason. So understand that this wording here isn't the full process. This is the shorter version of what you're doing. So you will, as a full process, you roll that dice. If you get the 6+, 50%, you'll put the trap in the discard pile and shuffle the discard pile back into the deck, and then you'll resolve whatever hit location cards you have left out. This is very strong. Now, our partner to it is spear specialization. So this is worded a little differently, so it operates a little differently. This is when attacking with a spear. If you draw a trap, you roll 1d10, similar so far. On a 7+, cancel the trap. So that's 40%. You discard it, and then you reshuffle the hit location discard into the hit location deck and draw a card. So this is a tiny bit weaker in that it works less often, and it also might result in a redraw of the trap. And because this is a lopper, as you call them, limit once per round, LOPR, lopper, then you are, if you redraw the trap, then tough luck. But interestingly, if you have both of these on the same survivor, you'll have both triggers. So you can, if you manage to make a spear specialist or master with the blue charm on their gear grid, you could attack, do the 7+, and then if you fail or you redraw the trap, you can activate the blue charm and resolve that. So it's a really neat interaction that you can use both of these. And in fact, you can combine these in any order, so you could even use over here the like proactive versions, which I'll talk about afterwards, in combination with the blue charm. Technically, if we ever get a scythe spear, we could combine all three of them, but I'm not sure we're getting one of those. It'd be nice. So, blue charm. Biggest obstacle after crafting it is how do we get enough blue affinities in our gear grid. So I gathered together here some of the best options and laid them out just to connect as many affinities as possible, because I always like doing that, but also it helps demonstrate things that you can use in different organizations in your gear grid. Now, if you can have a survivor who doesn't need armor for whatever reason, there's a bunch of survivor types you can do that now, then you could be in a great position where you just use items to build your loadout. You connect enough of these up, and there's easily sufficient here, and you can just do it all that way, which is fantastic, because then you've got a lot of extra abilities and useful things. Normally though, we're going to be doing it with an armor set. I'm going to demonstrate 2 armor loadouts just down below here and over there that will show how you can do this. One of them is purely core game, and the other one uses an expansion and is far more flexible. But for now, let's just take a quick look at these examples and why they're good. So, Gorn comes from the Gorm. It's an instrument without noisy. Always have to make this note that that may change. When it does change, probably not using this outside of Nemesis showdowns anymore unless we get a new basic hunt table. Then we got Speed Powder. Interesting thing about this is because you can cancel the trap potentially, you like stuff that gives you more speed. More speed means you can hit more often and have a higher chance of cracking into the trap. And also with spears that mostly have reach, you may even be safe from a number of the reactions which punish you for being adjacent. You can just not be adjacent. So more speed is actually pretty good. This is hard to get. If you get a second heart from the Screaming Antelope, I recommend you craft one of these for sure, because it's quite rare to get. And this is an interesting and fun item to use, not even just on Lancers, but other kinds of survivors can do very well with +1 speed. Cat-Eye Circler, it's amazing, we all know how it works. This gives you something you can do every turn if you want to play a really controlling style where all you do with the Lancer is step in and hit the trap, and the rest of the time you control hit locations. Perfectly viable strategy. It's not really how I like to play anymore. I prefer to just keep moving, keep pushing forwards, and avoid hit location lining up or farming too much. But you know, sometimes if your settlement's in a bad state, this just spending a year carefully, methodically tearing apart a white lion or a screaming antelope can really change the day, and that can be great. So it's just a good item. Hunter's Whip, not so great as a weapon. It's about 1 to 2 points too low for what it needs to be, but if you have a really high strength survivor, this becomes great. It's got a nice ability here, but also with thanks to these lovely affinities, this can be just a really useful thing to have on your gear grid for the blues, and then for benefits during the hunt, because whips have a bunch of like ways of saving people's butts during various hunt events, which is really nice. Blue ring, this comes from Spediculus, but you need to make a legless ball. I'll talk about that in the Spediculus specific bestiary video. For now though, all you need to know is this is one of the best all blue items in the entire game. It's incredibly powerful. This is such an amazing ability, and also it's one of the few things giving us this many affinities to connect up. Bandages are great. Prevent bleed. Bleed is pretty scary, and it's one of the few ways that you can heal damage, quote unquote damage. So it's just good and it's cheap. Wisdom potion from the Gorm, absolutely amazing. Works really well passively with your playstyle, because you know specifically when the trap's on top, so everyone can step back and wait for you to get the job done. So fantastic. Also plays really nicely with the cat eye circlet and other forms of manipulation, which is always fun. Talon knife. This weapon's nearly good. This strength is 2 points too low for what it's doing, and this ability does not work with paired. That runs counter to paired. However, this affinity layout is super rare. For a long time, this was one of the few pieces of gear with this layout. There's a second piece of gear we're going to look at that is way, way better. But if you don't have the Screaming Antelope, you might want this for these two affinities, which is pretty solid. Sunlure and Hook, we're going to be looking at the Sky Harpoon. So also worth remembering, this is very good alongside the Sky Harpoon. Gaining survival, doing sky fishing, all great. Almanac, solid. You've opened the Barber Surgeon anyway, so this is a really great piece of mental protection. Not gaining disorders, very, very strong. Especially for Accept Darkness, where if you can't gain any more disorders, you don't have to worry about dying to brain trauma. Because if you don't have 3 disorders, the die because you have 3 disorders result can't occur. Lucky Charm, really strong. Main reason we actually want it is these 2 affinities. There's not many straight line blue affinities. You can see just from this lot here, we've only got Blue Ring and Lucky Charm. So that's actually quite useful. And +1 luck, you don't mind doubling the chances of scoring a critical wound. You're going to be stabbing quite a bit, attacking quite a bit, especially if you're being offensive. So that is quite nice. Finally, Fecal Salve, cheap, extra survival, reasonable ability, especially if you're planning to be pure support until it's time to stab with the stab into the trap, and a blue affinity. So that's a selection. As you can see, a lot of them are providing some other value, not just the affinities, and that's a big important part of what I'm looking for with things to put in here. Is slots are tight, so I don't want something just for pure affinities. It either provides a lot of affinities like these 4 items here, or it provides really good, I should say gear cards. Strictly speaking, these 2 aren't items. Really good affinities and all really, really good abilities. So yeah, blues, boom. Spear. Okay, so when it comes to spears, I've just grabbed the best selections for various different progress points during the campaign. There are a lot of spears and you can pick others, but for my money, King Spear is your best starting point. You can get this in Lantern Year 1, which means you can be working on spear specialization maybe as early as the 3rd showdown fight, which is really nice. Amber Poleaxe is basically Spediculus's version. Notably, it's an axe and a spear. I wouldn't be using this if I have access to the King Spear, unless I fail to get a King Spear. But for campaigns that have Spediculus but no White Lion, this is an alternative option. It does have a very strong ability. It's just about, I think, twice as expensive as the King Spear. So you know, yeah. Finger of God from the Phoenix, really solid progression from King Spear to Finger of God. You see we've jumped up a little bit in strength. We've got a decent ability here if we can get it active. It's all nice. It's not too hard to get being from the level 1 Phoenix, so it's a good option. Over here is our Sunstalker option. This is way better. It has reach 3, which is great, and Savage, which is solid, not amazing, but if you're also running lots of blue affinities, then you might have lucky charms to take advantage of that. And it actually has a 50% chance of scoring an additional wound and moving the monster to you. And you'll notice this doesn't have any timing windows to it. It doesn't have any activation to it, so you can actually disrupt a monster by yanking it away from doing something, as long as you're not doomed during the process. This is a super powerful ability. But it only was half the time. Finally, at the top end, here we got the Lantern Glaive. This is like one of the best core game axe / spears, and that's actually super useful because once you have spear mastery, you can use a Lantern Glaive to train up axe and take advantage of spear. So dual type weapons or even triple types, when you see them, super powerful. This is like an average 9.5 strength thanks to sharp. Or if you prefer, the wounding roll it typically rolls is 15. So very good, very good. Upgradable in the core campaign as well, with the end game spoilery stuff. Stampede Glaive, you need the Indomitable Survivor Zell to be able to get this. You get it from killing a level 3 Screaming Antelope. I'm using one of these in the campaign I'm playing right now. It is really fun. It has terrible accuracy, but you can stack by dashing around and get your speed up, and then you have enough speed to overcome this bad accuracy. And technically there's no cap on this. If you have ways of generating more survival, you can just keep going. The only real negative is it's not super high on the strength, but there's ways of bolstering your strength through a lot of different options. It's a super good weapon, and I reviewed Zell. Highly recommend it. Getting it in physical and or the tabletop simulator. It's a KDM simulator version. Another old habit kicking in. This is not tabletop simulator. This is better than tabletop simulator. Yeah, this is the KDM simulator version. Right, okay, now the other thing we're going to look at briefly is our proactive way of lancing the trap. Okay, so there's two ways of doing this. One of them is in the core game, and we'll look at that one just first. You could get the Crest Crown from the level 3 Phoenix, and you can reshuffle the hit location deck. This will do a full reshuffle, so all the discard back in, boom, boom, boom. You just have to be insane, and you have to have gotten this. So it's a very powerful item. But we have another way, which is here with Scythe Specialization. So when you critically wound with a Scythe, roll 1d10 on a 6+, shuffle the hit location deck. Do not shuffle and resolve hit locations, but you'll shuffle the discard pile back in as well. This is a limit once per round, a lopper. So essentially, to provide a nice, simple analogy of this, if there's 10 cards in the hit location deck, and one of them's the trap, then we've got a 10% chance of hitting the trap. Now, if we've removed 5 of those, then it's gone up to a 20% chance of hitting the trap on the next card draw. But if we get that reshuffle, then we reduce it back down again. So essentially, we're constantly lowering the odds as long as we keep critically wounding. Effectively, we're making it like we're playing against the Butcher, who has fast target, which is actually like, it's great. It is really great to be doing this. Like, fast target is not a negative. It's a very helpful trait on the Butcher, and sticking it onto other monsters is even better. Now, the main issue with this is, first of all, you have to own the Dragon King expansion. That's the only place where you get this mastery card. And also, in the first generation, there's not many scythes. On the simulator right now, we have one nuclear scythe. You have to get this from the Radiant Heart, which is gained from the Dragon King, either automatically from the level 2 or via the death blow against the level 1. And it also has a fairly high chance of killing a survivor when you get it, which is not ideal. So it's expensive, and this stat line is a big old stinking pile of garbage. It's terrible. No weapon that is that hard to get should have 4 strength. And honestly, this should be at 7 strength at least, in my opinion. but it is upgradable. You can get these cores. The level 2 Dragon King gives you sharp, which is nice, but the level 3 gives you the blue power core, which puts deadly 2 onto all nuclear gear cards in your gear grid. So suddenly this is critting on a 8+, 8, 9 or a 10, and you can even put a lucky charm on there to get 7, 8, 9, 10, so that's a 40% chance of working. So you'll be massively reducing the odds consistently every time you attack. I would briefly like to note that I don't understand why the 2 cores don't have either an affinity on them or affinities on all the edges. I'd love this to have like blue, 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 so you're encouraged to put it in the core middle of your gear grid, making it like the core piece you build around. But you know, it is what it is. This is still quite strong. Deadly 2, very strong, yeah, especially given how offensive scythes are. Now, the difficulty involved with spear, and to a lesser extent scythe, is you're doing a dangerous job, especially spear, but you really need to preserve your survivor in order for them to get to mastery. Once they have mastery, anyone using the weapon has access to specialization, and we want the specialization abilities. The other issue is just the sheer amount of work involved. We already want to max out Fist and Tooth and Shield, and suddenly we're adding a third, like, must improve, must max out weapon proficiency. So now we're locked in our early campaign to going Fist and Tooth, Shield and Spear, or maybe Scythe, but usually we won't get Scythe that early. And get it a bit earlier with promo content and similar. But yeah, it's a real push and pull tension where you're doing a dangerous job, and also you're dealing with not much flexibility in the number of survivors training different weapon types. So early on, you could probably go Spear, Fist and Tooth and then 2 others, but things are going to get a bit tight once you're trying to do Shield, because you've unlocked your first Shield as well. So just to be aware, there is a lot of tension involved in this, and it does hurt to lose your Spear user before they reach Mastery. That is not a fun time, and it happens more to them than most other weapon mastery, weapon proficiency trainers, because of how dangerous the role kind of is. Anyway, on to armour sets. So, 4 armour sets I'd like to highlight. These first 2 we're going to talk about in detail down below, but Screaming Armour has a bunch of spear synergies and a good amount of blue affinities. Cycloscale Armour has this incredible ability called Prismatic, which turns all complete and incomplete affinity halves as all colours, meaning you can connect a blue and a red, or a blue and a green, or a red and a green, and they count as a blue, red and a green. Which is just amazing. You'll notice both of these are not adding a lot on the armor locations, so they're a little fragile. That definitely becomes a problem later on. Shields can help a bit, but Screaming Armor struggles to achieve a shield unless you're willing to sacrifice the blue charm. Cycloscale has a little bit of an easier time. Our other options, if we're just kind of going pure scythe or we're going spear, is running monster movement abilities. Getting this extra strength that both of these offer does a lot. And additionally, Dragon Armour, Phoenix Armour, these are some of the best non-heavy armour sets in the game, meaning you could even maintain like Rhythm Chaser, which is really nice. Fighting arts, just going to highlight a few. At the top, these kind of things. Unconscious Fighter, you're doing a dangerous job. Taking longer to bleed out can be quite important, and there's even a monster that generates bleed on you and you can't remove it, and it does it with its trap. So this is very nice to have. Tough, again, dangerous job. Having bonuses to your severe injury table rolls means you're less likely to die, which is nice. Orator of Death, this leans more into the support role. I actually have this right now on a Survivor with one of the Black Knight sets, which is running a Stampede Glaive support build, and this is really helpful here because it's another ability. Even though it's once per showdown, just being able to put +2 insanity on people can be incredibly useful, especially for like sentient users or speed powder users, things like that. Bottom side, are leaning into trying to roll more dice. So Combo Master and Legendary Lungs, both of us give additional attack rolls. This one, you know, it triggers more often but has a limit. This one can just keep going and going and going. As I mentioned, we don't really mind rolling additional dice, so these can both be helpful. If we're rolling a lot of dice, we tend to get more perfect hits, so we could look at like Craze to help our insanity, or Mighty Strike to help increase our strength up. So those are the kind of things to look out for. Is, do I have ways of giving myself more dice to roll when attacking? Do I have things that will pay off for rolling more dice, such as perfect hit? Or even, you know, you could have like Timeless Eye in combination with some of these. So that's always quite nice and fun. If you're playing Gambler's Chest, you can even relate this stuff across to knowledges, because there's similar knowledges. Okay, we're going to finish up with a little look at two builds. Now this one, I both love and hate this build. So we got our 5 blue affinities, but in order to achieve that, we've had to do something I hate doing, which is breaking the Screaming armor set apart. As you can see, we've achieved this by moving the Screaming coat to the bottom left corner, connecting the horns above it, and then using the Lucky Charm as a bridge to Cat Eye Circlet. This could be any left-facing blue. And then we have gotten the blue charm in here, we've got our other affinity here, we've got a red just because we can, and then we've got a weapon up here. So there are ways you can alter this even further, especially if you have access to weapons that generate more blue affinities, but this, I was really happy when I finally got this to work and figured this out to be like Spear plus Blue Charm on Screaming Armor. Fantastic. The biggest negative is this does not scale too far, because you don't have much ways of generating additional armor points, but the Stampede Glaive does a really nice thing in that we can whoop, I've clicked on that, I didn't mean to, we can put that there, and suddenly we got room to pop a shield in here, which can help. So things have gotten better. This is a big reason why I think Zell is so good at making the Screaming armor, like hunting Screaming Antelopes, better. So that's Screaming armor, and that's an example of how you can take an armor set that's only providing like 2.5 blue affinities, 1, 2.5, and get there, and also like how useful the Lucky Charm could be. Whoop, I picked up some dice. Let's throw them. Oh, classic. I don't even know what that is. Right. Cyclone Scale Armor. So this is demonstrating how neat and strong this armor set is. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 blue, red, and green affinities. Remember, this is how Prismatic works. This counts as connected and as all color types. So does this and this. So we get a blue charm on the grid. We haven't had to make any compromises. We've even got room to connect a bit more. Heck, if we wanted, we could put a red charm on here and a green charm, and they'd all be active. You know, you can do what you like. But this means you've got room for whatever spear you want, a shield, and another support item. And on top of that, we're getting extra evasion here. We're gaining survival here. We have a very strong version of the fecal salve here on our shoes. We get extra accuracy here, so we do want to connect this if we can. You can always do it like that, just self-contained within the armor set. So, but yeah, and then, you know, things are still all connected up, and you've got this freebie here. It's great. This is a incredibly good armor set. Any kind of offensive orientated build that isn't ranged appreciates this. The only real negative is you miss out on reach if you really want to take advantage of getting the sharp, but heck, I'll trade reach for getting sharp any day. So here we are. That's it. That is this hybrid class of Lancers. It is a personal favourite of mine, but I am biased towards it. The thing I really enjoy about it is it lets me have a support survivor who's also still providing offense, which is very, very helpful. And if you do want to play a Lancer, as we can see, the key, the strongest of monsters that you can hunt is the Screaming Antelope, the Dragon King, the Phoenix, and the Sunstalker. So some combination of those. But you always, as long as there's a spear, you at a minimum have access to spear specialization, and you could run spear specialization with a ton of armor points and like bleed removal and stuff, and just be like, okay, if I don't succeed, then I'll tank the hit and use my soak to deal with it. So that is it. That is Lancers. And next time we are going to be looking at off-tanks, which includes a subclass that the other one that I helped pioneer. And I'm really looking forward to that. But, you know, until next time, grab your spear, don your armour, get your blue charm around your neck, and happy hunting.